Welcome to the Starfish Diaries. I am your host, Liz McKean, and you might have found me from another podcast or from yoga or through coaching or maybe a recovery event, but all that matters is that you're here now, and I am so glad that you're here. On this show, we're going to be talking about identity and self-trust and recovering from all sorts of things, including shame and burnout and squeezing ourselves into what we think good looks like. And I'm going to use a lot of metaphors because that's how I make sense of the world. And I'm hoping that helps you too. I'm really just here to remind you and honestly remind us that there is no such thing as doing life wrong and that you do get to make your life into a place that you want to be. And we're going to figure it out together. So let's go. Hello and welcome back. I am so happy that you're here and that you hit play. I'm also wondering if I've said that same thing on an intro for the last, I don't know, what episode are we on, like 7 or 8? Anyways, thanks for doing it. Thanks for hitting play and thanks for listening. I hope you listened to last week's episode about the dragonfly. If you didn't, I think you should because it made me really happy to share that story. And some people reached out and told me that they also had never heard about how dragonflies became dragonflies and their minds were blown just like mine. And I just don't think our minds get blown in a, fun and unexpected way, like how dragonflies become dragonflies nearly enough. Yeah, no, we need more delightedness of mind-blowing situations in our lives. But before we have a mind-blowing conversation today, which now I feel like I've set myself up for failure, we're going to do a little bit of a deep breath because that's how we roll on Starfish Diaries. So wherever you are, maybe take a minute just to roll your shoulders up, back and down, let your head kind of rock side to side. When I listen back to these episodes, I do it too, and it always feels good. So hopefully you get that experience. Unclench your jaw. And then when you're ready, just empty out all your breath. Just a big exhale. Squeeze it out like your belly's getting squeezed like a balloon. All the air goes out. And then with me, take a big breath in through your nose. And open your mouth. And how slow can you exhale? Let's do one more. Big breath in. And then slow exhale. Yeah. Thanks for doing that with me. And come back to your normal breath. If you're not a deep breath taker, that's all right. Thanks for hanging out while the rest of us do it. So when I posted on my Instagram stories about the dragonfly episode, I shared a story because I felt like it was a funny connection. And I'll share that funny connection towards the end of this episode because we need to get into it for heaven's sake. But it was just funny because I shared this story that I get so many people responded to it. I had yoga teachers react and say they really liked the idea. I had other folks just respond and say they really liked the song, and you don't know what I'm talking about yet, so I will tell you. So I was a yoga teacher at a treatment center, a substance use treatment center for several years. I truly do not have the words to express how much I loved doing that, teaching that group, those groups, getting to be part of that just incredibly tender part of people's lives and sharing a tool that helped me so much in my own recovery. It was just the honor of a lifetime. I loved it. The amount of times I left there and would literally call my mom and be like, this is the reason I'm on the planet. Like, this is just, I've never felt so like I'm in the right place, like doing what I'm supposed to do. And it was just such a gift. And I'm so glad. I'm so grateful. So there's that. But I had to learn a lot of tricks. I was a relatively new, like within the first couple years of teaching yoga when I started putting that program together. And I'm so glad that's kind of where I started. Between teaching online during COVID and then teaching at a treatment center, it was not your typical new yoga teacher trajectory. I was not in studios. I was not in a place where I could say, Warrior Two and have people know anything about what that was. I could not even say, hey, what are you in the mood for today? Or do you have any injuries I should know about? Like that was just not the vibe. So I was teaching folks who were in an incredibly vulnerable time in their lives, feeling uncomfortable in their body. I mean, to put it so lightly, that lightly is like way in the rearview mirror. And so my role, as I saw it, was to bring them something that could help them feel a little bit better for just this little snippet of time during this period of their life. And my job was not to make sure they walked away knowing how to do a vinyasa, or make sure they walked away with a perfect chaturanga. I didn't even care if they knew or ever even heard any of those words. I wanted for that little bit of time for them to feel a little better in their bodies and their minds, and to experience maybe a little bit of what I'd experienced when I started doing yoga in early recovery and even pre-recovery, which was these little moments where it was like, oh my God, maybe I am safe in here, in here, in my mind, in my body, where it felt like the most dangerous place to be. And it's a lot to ask of someone who is maybe, sober or off their substance of choice for the first time, probably as long as they can remember, and suddenly experiencing, feeling, thinking all the things. And now I'm asking you to be still. I'm asking you to stretch. I'm asking you to take deep breaths. I'm asking you to notice things in your body. And it's just the audacity to ask those things of someone who's going through that. So I was given the opportunity to do this and learn what it was like to come without a plan, because I didn't know who was going to be in that class and what people were going to be in the mood for, what they were going to feel up for. And I might have someone who was incredibly athletic. I had plenty of people that came that were familiar with yoga or other types of physical movement. And I'd have folks who were like, I can't do yoga. Don't ask me to sit down on that mat because I'm not getting back up, I had folks with severe injuries. I had folks in a lot of pain, the opioid epidemic in particular is so cruel because so many people became addicted to these medications because they needed them for this horrific pain. And then when the medication became its own problem, to take it away the pain is still there. We need another solution, right? So there's just so much to consider when folks are in that moment. And it just takes so much courage to even be in that place in life to say, I'm going to try to get better somehow. It is such a leap of faith and bravery. And I'll do more episodes about recovery and my thoughts there. But all of that was in my mind and in my heart when I went to teach a yoga class. And one of the more fun tools that I found was the one that I shared on my Instagram stories the other day. So, like I said, folks would come to my yoga classes. I would walk around and introduce myself to people and invite them. Nobody was forced to go to these classes. I would invite them, and when they would come, it might have been the first time they'd ever done yoga. And for others, maybe they were familiar, but there are some kind of social constructs to a yoga class, right? You sort of are quiet. You're not interacting with the teacher so much. You're not interacting with each other so much. You're on your own mat. You're having your own experience. You draw on everyone else's energy, certainly, and that's a really beautiful part of a class, but it's a pretty private experience. And if you ever been in a yoga class where someone is making a lot of noises, that just adds an element that maybe you didn't sign up for. And, I want to be very clear that I don't view my role as a yoga teacher as one of control. It is not my job to force anyone to have a specific type of experience. It is certainly not my job to, be the police what you are and aren't allowed to do, but it is my job to the best of my ability, maintain a safe space emotionally and physically for everyone. And that means I need to know that if there is someone who is just kind of crawling out of their skin with discomfort and also maybe in a headspace where they don't know how to not be disruptive, that is going to feel very unsafe for the person next to them who really needs it to be quiet, who really needs some peace. And for the person who's kind of jumpy, I got to give them something to be able to do too, because being still won't feel safe to them. So how do we do that? How do we provide that for everyone? And there's no perfect way, and there's no such thing as perfect. And part of the practice is accepting that everything isn't going to be just right, that you're not going to be always comfortable all the time. But music is a really helpful piece of this, because music can bring people together. It can be a place where your brain can kind of settle. And man, I have always been a little embarrassed about my tastes in music, to be honest. I don't know who gave me that complex or where it came from when I was younger, but I expected to really struggle with it when I became a yoga teacher, and I ended up really enjoying it. And I love putting together playlists, and I love music that I play in my yoga classes. And if you've ever taken a class with me, you've probably heard a lot of the same music, because one of the things I found is that for folks who would come to my classes again and again, particularly those going through something like recovery or any kind of challenging time or trauma, having familiar anchors to hold on to, like the music, was really powerful. I still have people who came to my classes, people who were in treatment when I taught there, people who came to others of my classes and talk about like, oh, I just heard that song that you used to play at the end of class, or I used to hear that song that you used to play, and it just brought me right back, and it made me smile, and that makes me feel very verklempt. So one way that I used music was to just find music that I knew was very universally soothing and uplifting. And while I kept most of my yoga playlists very PG rated, I was careful about that. Certainly in a treatment center setting, I was careful to make sure there wasn't any mention of illicit drugs or alcohol or anything, because that could be very triggering. But even just, curse words, that's not all that soothing sometimes for the nervous system, with one exception. There was one song that I found, and I also am realizing it might not even be this. I might be wrong about the lyric. It might just really sound like this word. I've never looked up the lyrics, but it's Bon Iver, and the song is Holocene, and there is the word fuck in there one time, and it's kind of hidden in there. And again, I'm just realizing now that what if that's not what he says? Who cares? It doesn't matter. In the beginning of class, when I had a class where I was like, this might be a challenging group to help, keep that safe space, keep that serene kind of vibe that I know folks are in need of. So I would say one of the songs in this playlist has the word fuck. Listen for it. And it was like a magic trick, because for me, I go to yoga because my mind is so busy. My nervous system is so eager to feel like we are being chased. But if I start to breathe in a certain way, and when I start to move my body in a certain way, I mean, for heaven's sake, just balancing and trying not to fall down is wildly effective at getting me out of that state of anxiety. And I mean, at one point in my life, craving, and just the cycle that is happening would start to slow because I was so focused on the other stuff, on the body, on the breath. That doesn't always work if you're really uncomfortable in your body. If you've never done yoga before and you're like, this is stupid, I don't care where my right foot goes and my left foot goes. Who cares if my hips are pointing forward or to the side? I don't know what you mean when you say drop your shoulders, But I do know what you mean when you say the word fuck is in a song. And I'm going to find that, because that is a place I can put my brain. And without fail, everyone would just be quiet because they were focused on something. And most of the time, they would forget that was what they were focused on. And this is not like a magic trick I'm playing, and this is not something that is unique to folks who are in the recovery process. This is just a thing that human brains do, right? When we get out of the spinning in our heads, like, we just start to settle, and like it just gets a little quieter, and it just feels a little better. That being said, without fail, that song would come on and someone would be like, I heard it as if they said fuck, and then everyone would laugh. And that was so great, because then everyone was like reminded that, it's just yoga, we're just stretching, we're just breathing, who cares if you're laying on the mat and he's standing up, and who cares if, whatever, I tried to stand on one foot and I fell. I mean, I would do that, and I'm the freaking teacher. And so like, it was just such a beautiful combination of allowing us to find something to focus on, of allowing some lightness into something that could feel far too serious. And come on, it is just yoga. It's powerful, and it's sacred and I'm so grateful for it. And also, it's just yoga. I had one time that I played it at the end of class in Shavasana, which if you're not a yoga person, that's just at the end when you finished all the movement and then you're just laying down and closing your eyes. And, sometimes the soft song plays, sometimes the teacher, pardon me, is talking you through, ways to relax your body. And I played that at Shavasana just once. I don't usually play things with words, but without saying a word, when that word dropped, one of the guys in the class just silently, laying down, eyes closed, raised his fist in the air. It was the best. I was like, you win, yoga. I'm clapping my hands right now. You can't see me. Anyways, I have really good memories of that time. And that also is just like one example of ways I feel like those experiences I had and the unique way I was able to find myself as a teacher in yoga happened. I used to say, I know I've said this to my husband. I think I've probably said this in the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, but I like to think I'm a teacher who sneaks spinach in the smoothie. And you got a little kid and trying to get them to eat their vegetables and they just won't. I say this as not a mother. I'm assuming mothers do this. I think my sister told me she does this, so sorry for parents out there if I'm misrepresenting your tool. But, a smoothie could just taste like a milkshake, maybe even a chocolate milkshake or strawberry, whatever the kid wants, right? But you can sneak a lot of stuff in there, fruits and vegetables, and, you put spinach in the smoothie. I do that. I'll get a smoothie at the gym sometimes and I'll be like, I want the chocolate banana. I think it's like a chunky monkey smoothie. And it just tastes like chocolate and peanut butter, and it's so delicious, but I'll be like, can you shove as much spinach as you can in there? Because I know I'm not going to be able to taste it. I just do need to trick myself like a toddler to get my vegetables in me. And when I teach yoga, I don't care if you can touch your toes. I mean, honestly, if you are a person who can't touch your toes, then you're just going to feel the stretch easier, which is the fun part, right? When you get a nice stretch, the hamstrings, whatever. So whoever you are, and when you come to my yoga class, whatever, your ability is or what you're trying to get out of it or whatever, like my goal is to have it feel comfortable to start, right? And for some people, that happens because I say, if you just lay on your mat and take a nap, like that's fine. And for others, it's like, just stretch. We're going to feel good in our bodies and we're going to take a nice stretch. And for others, it's like, we're going to do a nice flow and there's going to be music or whatever, like whatever you need to get started is great. But by the end of that class, there's going to be an element of peace. There's going to be an element of quiet in your mind that was really loud before. And to me, that is the spinach that we stuck into the smoothie. You didn't necessarily come because you were going to eat your vegetables today. You just wanted the chocolate milkshake, but we snuck the spinach in the smoothie. And whether that means, you needed to know it was okay to leave if you wanted to leave. You needed to know it was okay to lay down and go to sleep. You needed to be reminded 100 times that it does not matter if you can touch your toes. There is no prize. Or if it just means you're going to listen for the, F-bomb in the middle of the playlist. Like whatever it takes, like I want by the end of that class, at the very least for you to feel like, oh my God, I did it. Like I did it, even if it was just sitting here for an hour. And if you are a person who has anxiety, who's gone through the process of finding recovery and whatever that is for you, whether that's a substance or eating disorder or trauma or even an injury, like how what a big ask that is to come and be still and to breathe. And you deserve to feel really, if anything, proud of that at the end. So anyways, that's my story of rated R playlists. Oh, and the connection I had to the last podcast, and if you haven't listened to the previous episode, maybe this will be the invitation that you need, the spinach in your smoothie. For some reason, not for some reason, I know because I'm a child, I thought it was so funny that I recorded a podcast and said the word rectum. I laughed so hard after I hit end. Actually, I might have laughed really hard before I hit end. My wonderful editor, producer, might have had to hear me talk about how funny I thought that was before I ended the recording. Anyways, I thought that was great, and I thought maybe somebody else will think this is funny, and regardless of what they think about dragonflies, maybe that'll get them to listen and look for that word. Or that could just completely turn somebody off and make them never want to listen to me at all. And that's fine too, because, that could mean I'm not for you, and that's all right. Maybe you do taste the spinach in the smoothie, and it's not your jam. Anyways, whatever brought you here, whatever kept you here, whatever, version of you is here now versus when we started, I'm so grateful that you're here with me. And any opportunity that I have to, just show up and share and be, whatever ridiculous version of myself is present in the day is just the greatest gift. And it wouldn't be nearly as fun if you weren't here listening, because, even though I can't see you and we're not even synchronously having this conversation, I feel that connection and I know that you're there, and it's really special because you are really special, and it wouldn't be the same without you. So I'm really glad that you're here, and I say that with my whole heart. So with that in mind, let's just breathe together one more time. Maybe just let the shoulders get a little heavier. Maybe unclench your jaw if it's clenched, or if your face is contorted in all the laughter that you've been experiencing over the past 20 minutes or so. See if you can let some of those muscles soften, and exhale all the air. And then inhale, big breath in, fill the belly. Hold it at the top. Feel the rib cage expand. Exhale with some noise. Yeah, one more big breath in. Long breath out. Go back to your normal breath. Go back to your normal day. You're wonderful and perfect, and I adore you, and I cannot wait to see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Starfish Diaries. I want to take a quick moment to thank some of the people who have made this possible. The artwork that I am so in love with is by my friend and the most talented artist, Mo Houston, and you can find her and her work and work with her by going to Joy Scout Studios. I will have that linked in the show notes. And thank you to my incredible editor, Sean Gritters. If you are looking for production support with your podcast, highly recommend that you check him out. His information will also be in the description.